Good morning and welcome to the new episode of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. When the people suffer from a frenzy created by politicians and the world leaders, then they ignore something which is much more important and much more imperative. All this talk about Ukraine war is hiding one fact, and that is that the global economy is likely to suffer such a jolt that it might never recover. Today, nearly 400 million people across 45 cities in China are under full or partial lockdown, and that's a part of Chinese strict zero COVID policy. Now, seemingly it's internal affair of China, but see, 400 million people, almost the population of North America, one complete continent, more than 1.5 times the population of Australia continent. And together they represent 40% of the annual GDP of the world's largest economy, that's China. $7.2 trillion. So when $7.2 trillion worth of economy is devastated, then you can imagine the impact it will have globally. They say when a butterfly waves its wings in Brazil, there's an earthquake elsewhere. But then this 40% of the world economy, how would it impact global? And unfortunately, the investors are so carried away by the cacophony, the noise created by the other things, that the serious implications of this global fallout are not being assessed. They are underestimating the impact because of one reason, and that is our attention is diverted by two things. One, Russian-Ukraine conflict, and the second, US Federal Reserve's rate hikes. And this is assessment even of the Chinese. Liu Tong, Nomura's chief Chinese economist, says the same thing. And most alarming is the one factor that there's indefinite lockdown in Shanghai, a city of 25 million people and one of China's premier manufacturing and export hubs. 25 million people, which exports practically everything that people in the West consume. And the result, the quarantines, the lockdowns have led to food shortage, lack of medical care, and even pet killing. They are the largest port of the world's understaffed. The port of Shanghai, possibly you may not be aware, handles 20% of the Chinese freight traffic, and it's at standstill. And the containers, without access to refrigeration, are rotting. So the food, the consumer goods, and the industrial goods. And that's the most important thing. The incoming cargo is now stuck at Shanghai marine terminals, and there is a 75% increase since the start of the lockdown. Export shortages are falling because of the storage problem. The supply chain is visibly being affected. Then cargo airlines have cancelled all flights in and out of the city. And 90% of the trucks sporting import and export are out of action. 90%. No flights. Now, 6% of the Chinese exports are produced in Shanghai. 20% are exported from Shanghai. And the factory closures in and around city are further rattling the already dying supply chain. Now, look at the reality. Sony and Apple suppliers plants in and around Shanghai are no longer working. The world's biggest notebook manufacturer is Quanta, and is also a MacBook maker. They have stopped production entirely. The plant accounts for 20% of Quanta's notebook production capacity. Just one plant, and that's low. And the company estimated that it would ship 72 million units this year. Tesla, the blue-eyed boy, the company of the votaries of climate change resistance. Tesla has closed down its Shanghai Gigafactory, which produces 2,000 electric cars a day. And now China has sent a task force to Shanghai to work on a plan to resume production of 666 key manufacturers in the city. 666 key. And the Tesla experts, I was talking to them, they say that they are hoping that they are allowed to reopen by Monday, ending the factory's longest pause since 2019. Imagine that. And look at it. It's not enough. It's going on. Till now, Tesla has lost over 50,000 units of production thus far. And the impact on China is a major, and knock on the global economy are significant. The result is going to be volatility and economic and social disruption for at least half an year, even if the lockdown is lifted today. And there's no sign it will be lifted. The prolonged disruption of the Chinese manufacturing and the shipping would accelerate a key initiative taken by Biden, which aims at reducing Chinese dependence on the U.S. dependence on the Chinese production. But look at the economic repercussions. World Trade Organization released a report last week, Friday it was, yes. And in that report they warned the worst case scenario involving decoupling global economies because of the sanctions against Russia would reduce the GDP globally by 5%. 5% reduction of GDP only because of that, and another 20% reduction of GDP because of the Chinese lockdown. Now, that's highly unlikely given the deep financial connection between China and USA. But then, the attitudes are hardening. And at the end of 2020, 2 years back, the stocks and the bonds in each other had exceeded $3.3 trillion. So they, in case it further worsens, those $3.3 trillion might become zero. You see, they are intertwined economies. Today, whether you are in favor of globalization or not in favor of globalization, nobody can deny that these economies are intertwined. And the American business leaders believe decoupling is already underway. The pendulum has struck towards local sourcing now. But local production may not be capable enough. It's undeniable that 30 years of globalization is on its last breath. But then the global economy. You know, when Atlantic Council was being addressed by Janet Yellen, she said the U.S. is watching Chinese political and economic connections to Russia closely. Now, when the politics becomes supreme to economy, then that's a recipe for disaster. We always say flag follows the trade. But here, trade is following the flag. And that's not a happy sign. It's putting the cart before the horse. And that cart, which is not well lubricated. And you would see that when that happens, it's very difficult to separate economic issues from the broader considerations of political issues. And then that is given a mask of national security. So, what US is hoping is a bipolar split between China, Russia, which is not possible. And the world's attitude towards China and its willingness to embrace further integration would be affected. Third thing we cannot forget that 33% of the China today is stuck in quarantine. And when an elephant falls down, the earth shakes. Whether you like China or not, but then China is the most important economic player in the world today. 80% of the African economy depends on that. And almost 75% of the consumer good consumption is dependent on China. And this response of China is likely, total cost is estimated at $46 billion per month. $46 billion. And you can be sure that the hope of China to have a target of 5.5% economic growth this year is not likely to be met. And World Bank has understood it. But unfortunately, when World Bank talks of things which go against the professed desires of the political leaders, then they are not mentioned. Now, this economic burden is coming when the World Bank says that the Chinese economic growth would be reduced and it would be not more than 4%. And quite possible this fall you might see Chinese President Xi petitioning for a third term as a national leader. And when he petitions that and he becomes back as a leader, which is likely to be there, then the economy of the world would suffer still more. Now, why is it that such a horrible economic disaster, which is looming large on the continent, is not being talked about? Why is it that war between two countries is being projected as something which is going to cast a spell? Why can't the other countries remain quiet and look after the needs of their own countries? Today, millions of dollars are being spent on the arms industry. And those billions of dollars, 300 billion by USA, 100 billion by Canada, and these countries are already under heavy national debt. I'm not against helping Ukraine. If you politically want it, do it. But doing it at the cost of your own people is something which doesn't appeal to me. This only shows one thing, that the people as a whole are being ignored. That these political leaders, under the garb of being patriots and custodians of world democratic system, standing up against aggression, all that is just a camouflage, a cover for extending their own spheres of influence. I won't even object to that. But what I object is that the common people like you and me are being made the sacrificial goats. And the future of the coming generations is being imperiled by these myopic policies which are of no good at all to anybody. neither to the warring nations, nor to the supporters, nor to the opposers. We have to come out of the cocoon of the political miasma, realize that the economy is of supreme importance because that is going to spur the further development. Unfortunately, we are not, at least our leaders are not thinking that way, and that way lies the tragedy of the nation. I hope this comes to an end and the people are able to realize that all is not well with the world. Thank you.